Welcome to Marveling at the MCU, a podcast that mixes geekdom with nostalgia as a comic book geek and a film nerd rewatch the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm Ollie Lewington and I'm the resident film nerd.
My name is David O'Hara and I'm a comic book geek.
Before we get started today, we'd love it if you would take the time to rate and review the podcast in your favourite podcast app. It really does help us reach more people who share our love and your love of the MCU.
Today we're talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, which was first released in July 2018. It was directed by Peyton Reed and written by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, and by Paul Rudd, Andrew Barr, and Gabrielle Ferrari.
So, Dave, Ant-Man and the Wasp, thumbs up, thumbs down, or meh?
You know what? I'm going to go thumbs up. I really enjoyed this. I seem to recall watching it the first time and being a bit, yeah, that was cool, but yeah, not overwhelmed by it. Because obviously, this is just after Infinity War pretty much. But yeah, no, on watching it again, I really loved it. It was just fun. There was lots of funny bits. It was great. I didn't have to think too hard about it. I loved it. It was really enjoyed fun.
Yeah, I'm meh. I think there are some bits that I really, really love in it, but there's just not enough to make me love it as a film. I can understand a thumbs up. I just can't quite get there.
Well, we'll see by the end of this if I can change your mind.
So, Ant-Man and the Wasp is the 20th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's the first sequel to be directed by the same director as the first film since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Although, to be fair, it's also only the second sequel since Guardians 2, so maybe that stat's not quite as good as I thought it was when I worked it out. I'll be honest,
fair enough.
I was reaching when I was trying to do the intro for this section. The most significant piece of context or significance, I guess, about this movie is that it's the first film in the MCU to have a female character in the title, which I have to admit I hadn't even noticed, which probably says something about me. It seems kind of bonkers, but it also is obviously a significant moment in the MCU. But I think the fact that the next 14 movies up to now only include 2 titles with a female character in does slightly put pay to the idea that it was any kind of turning point or line in the sand or anything like that. The original Ant-Man was the first movie in the MCU since The Incredible Hulk to not have any commitment to a sequel even before its release, which I think shows how much of a risk that shift towards the more comedic tone of the character and of the film was at the time. For example, Paul Rudd was contracted for multiple films because they knew they wanted to use the character again in Civil War. But Michael Douglas was only contracted for the first film. And Kevin Feige was quoted as saying they'd do another one if audiences liked it. And it wasn't until October 2015, which was about 4 months after Ant-Man was released, that And the Wasp was officially announced. Up to this point in his career, Peyton Reed, the director, had always turned down sequels. But he said that he wanted to do this one partly because he loved the characters and partly because he had the chance to actually develop it from the very beginning. If you remember, we talked about the fact in the original Ant-Man that most of it was developed by Edgar Wright before he left, like 2 months before they started shooting.
So he gets to do it himself for a change.
Yes, exactly. He got to do it. In that episode, we also talked about how cleverly they talked about and showed, or I guess didn't show, Janet in the flashbacks where she was always covered by the Wasp mask.
Yeah, so they weren't committed to an actress.
Weird family photo where she was like staring off to one side so you couldn't actually see her face. And obviously they did that to protect and to give themselves room to cast a big name for any future film, which obviously they did with Michelle Pfeiffer in this one. Apparently, Michael Douglas lobbied for them to cast his wife in real life, Catherine Zeta-Jones, who would have been great as an actress, but it's kind of hilarious because there's a 25-year age difference between them, and my very rough maths says that it would have put Janet in her like mid to late 20s when she went subatomic with a 10-year-old daughter, which is problematic in a few different ways, I think. So probably best that they went for Michelle Pfeiffer, someone closer
comparable ages,
to Michael Douglas's age. And then the final thing I'll mention is how grateful I was, and I suspect other people were too, that Peyton Reed insisted on making the film less than 2 hours long, since it was the one that immediately followed Infinity War, which was 2.5 hours long. And obviously it was in the lead up to Endgame the following year, which is basically 3 hours long. And it really does feel, I don't know if it's just because it's in comparison to Infinity War, but it really does feel like this film flies past. It goes very quickly. Let's talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Ghost and the other characters from the comics and anything else you want to talk to us about.
So this one, I guess, is again, this one will be relatively easy because we're pretty much joined with the same cast. In fact, we are joined with the same cast, with the same characters. There's only a few new. I mean, Wasp was in it last time. Well, as in, sorry. Yes. So we get more of Janet in this one. Not much still, but we get a bit more history with her. And we have Bill Foster introduced. We have Ghost, and we have Agent Woo, who is a character in the comics.
Oh, right.
I'll do Agent Woo first, just because it's a really short one. Because I'm just literally going to go with yes, he's an actual character. He first appeared in Yellow Claw issue 1 in 1956. He's basically, long story short, he's an FBI agent. He eventually becomes a Shield agent. Over his long comic career, he's been on so many teams, which I won't go into details of. But you got like the Stark Seven, the Godzilla Squad, Agents of Atlas, and towards the end of it, he gets kind of de-aged. I think his character either dies, and then this other character who's in the same story or whatever kind of reconstructs it from his memories, but he only knew him from 50 years ago. So he gets kind of reset to that point. So he doesn't have any memories of his last 50 years. But yeah, he's a Shield agent basically. So yes, no, he is an actual person. Yeah, there you go. So there you go. Agent Woo. There you go. Done the comic bit, done. Oh wait, we want more. Okay, right, fine. So Wasp, we didn't really. Oh, I can't remember in the actual first Ant-Man one. Did we go much into Janet? Because
we didn't, as far as I
bit.
remember. We kind of touched roughly on who she was in the context of the Avengers.
So yeah, she appears Tales to Astonish issue 44 in 1963. So she's old school, and she was like, so she's like a fashion designer, socialite kind of superheroine known as Wasp. She kind of gets into it in order to. She's basically trying to avenge the death of her father, because we love these tropes, from this extra dimensional creature that killed him. So she gets exposed to Pym particles and was then modified by Hank as the Wasp. So she's basically Hank's kind of like crime fighting buddy, having the abilities like in the thing, shrink, fly with her little wings and stingers, stuff like that. And she's alongside Hank. She's one of the founding members of the Avengers, and is the one literally who's responsible for suggesting the name, which I think we touched on in the Avengers one. So they eventually get married, but it gets a bit dodge because it's a really tragic. Basically, she becomes a victim of domestic abuse because it wasn't nice in that storyline. Yeah. So it's proper kind of wife beater thing. So there was a whole kind of hurtful divorce and stuff like that, and then she becomes. But as a result, she becomes like one of the most like prominent, efficient, and empathic kind of Avengers leaders. Like using the pain to drive herself forward, kind of thing. She gets kind of killed, inverted commas killed, during like one of the Skrull invasions when they kind of tamper with her, and her alleged demise was followed by the end of this kind of secret invasion war. But she was later found in the microverse, which is I think quantum realm, but in the comics kind of thing, by the original Avengers, and then she kind of cracked on with her superhero career. She, since witnessing Pym's death, she basically acts as a motherly mentor to her stepdaughter, who's the new Wasp in the comics, Nadia, who is so Hope obviously is made up. Hope is not a thing. So Nadia is the daughter of Hank and his first wife Maria, who was kind of kidnapped during the honeymoon, killed by baddies, foreign agents, and Nadia was raised in the Red Room in Moscow. I can't remember if I'd said this in the last one, where she changed into the Red Room agent herself, like Black Widow, which we'll obviously go to when we get to Black Widow. But that's Wasp anyway. So she is one of the characters who's been around forever, and she's a really important Avenger. So it's great that we see her on the big screen, and we don't actually get too much. You know, she's kind of a main character in the respect of she's the main goal of the film, isn't she? But we don't get much actual Wasp time yet, so we don't really.
No, she gets Wasp in terms of Janet.
I mean, not obviously because Hope gets loads.
Very, very small amount of screen time.
Bit of flashbacks and a little bit at the end, really.
Yeah.
So that's her. The other two kind of characters to really go into is I'll go with Ghost. So Ghost is again different in the comics. Iron Man baddie originally. So first appeared in Iron Man 219 in 1987. Name unrevealed. We don't know the name of Ghost.
As in the name of the person the
person,
Ghost.
Because it's the character's male in the comics, but we don't know his name.
Right.
We don't know his name at all. His kind of origin story is a bit suspect in the respect of his origin is told by him to another character who is also unreliable, Moonstone, who's like a baddie, Thunderbolts. Like the source material is questionable. Essentially, he was like this data engineer for a kind of computer corporate company, and they invent this ghost tech, which is what the suit comes from, basically, which is like computer chips that phase into intangible states and can still function while phased and hold lots of data. So basically, he makes this ghost suit thing because his company is a bit corrupt, obviously, because it's a corporate thing and they have to do that. Yes. His kind of girlfriend is murdered by them, and they try and assassinate him when he's done all his work. But he then basically he uses his little ghost tech suit thing and takes them all out one by one and gets rid of any links to his past and becomes basically a full-time corporate saboteur, which is why you have like no name, so you don't know who he is. And he's very weird because he also thinks in a very like binary way. Like, for example, Iron Man being a big corporate guy who therefore he doesn't like him, hence why he fights him. In one of the stories, he liquidates Stark Tech, which then Ghost then thinks, okay, he's no longer a corporate man now. That's it, not a threat now. Done. So it's very binary. He's very got a weird state of mind, but also, which is partly down also to his suit possibly making him a bit mentally unstable. As you can see, Ghost in this, she's starting to loses it towards the end. But he's basically an expert computer scientist, former data engineer. So he's really great with tech and hacking, and he can get through all that kind of stuff. He's a brilliant inventor, hence most of his stuff that he wears he designed, and he's really good with his firearms and stuff like that. But because of the phasing of the suit stuff, he's become more and more reclusive. That's the word. Less social. Basically, it's his equipment possibly messing with his head. So with his suit, so he doesn't have the powers himself. It's all from his suit. Unlike again in the film, and he uses it like Iron Man. It gets upgraded and different things happen. But essentially, he can phase through it. He can shoot things with it. He can be super stealthy with it. Hence Ghost. So he's pretty cool. He's all right. Yeah, that's cool. He's one of those like. Sorry, I stopped talking then while I was rustling.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's one of those like little minor baddies. Basically, he's a minor baddie. So I know I'll be very hypocritical when I moan about what they did to Taskmaster when Black Widow comes up. But in this one, I don't care about the gender swap. He's it doesn't make any difference to him. And essentially, since they've kind of almost made up the character, they based it on him. But I really kind of like what they did in this with them, because again, I remember watching it first time thinking a bit of a throwaway baddie. But like watching it again, I'll be honest, I really enjoyed watching the character, because it feels weird, because it's not like the entire motivation for the character in this is I want to get myself together because I'm being pulled apart, which is,
Yes.
not entirely a bad thing, especially when you're getting desperate because you're getting closer and closer to being like dissolved completely. It's going to make you be a bit extreme, especially if you're in pain constantly. You can kind of understand the motivations. So yeah, so no, I like what they did with it, and yeah. So I'm cool with the change basically. And as for the final kind of new character, who again doesn't get a massive amount of time, but they're in it, is old Bill Foster, Dr. Foster, played by Lawrence Fishburne, who is a good foil to go against Hank because they're two very extreme, experienced,
Yes.
tough actors. So that really works.
Yeah, it really does.
But the kind of original character was like a lab assistant of Hank, and when Pym was doing his Pym particle stuff, he kind of like when it was all still unstable, he got trapped in like a height of 10 feet, something like that. So he's quite big, and Foster helped him find the cure to get him back to normal size. After this point, he kind of Foster moves away, moves over to like I think the West Coast to take over the R&D section of a Stark company, Stark in LA, and but because he's memorized the formula to Pym's particles, he synthesizes it and trying to get rid of any like side effects, which he obviously tests on himself and then gives him the ability to grow and make himself big and small. He then this is weird. You can tell it's old kind of old stories. He joins a circus. he sorry, there's a circus in town. He kind of joins it. He poses as a circus act called, yes, this is the name, the proper name he uses, Black Goliath, because he's black and he's called, because that's the old comics for you, to win back, yes, his ex-wife, hence the costume. So he has this like carnival costume on, by claiming he's stuck in giant mode and needs money, hence why working at the circus, to earn to pay for research to cure himself. Blah blah blah. Then he comes afoul of Luke Cage, who you may remember from the Netflix series. Yep, who is currently dating his ex-wife, because that's fine. And they kind of run a crop with each other, and there's a bit of a competition there. But then it turns out that the circus is the circus of crime. Yes, again, yes, that is it. Comics can be ridiculous. The circus of crime. So they team up and stop their evilness shenanigans. And in the end, the ploy doesn't really work. She stays with Luke Cage, and so he just returns to LA. But when he's back there, Pym encourages him to start fighting crime, and so he does. So as he's Black Goliath for a little bit, and then he changes the name to Giant Man 2 because Pym has been Giant Man, so he's like Giant Man 2 at this point, which the Thing from Fantastic Four suggests to him. Because I think at this point Pym's either retired or he's doing something else. Pym has like a million alter egos, so it was at some point during there. And then he fights loads of different bad guys like Atom Smasher, Hyperion, and all these different things. Eventually, he gets kind of sick with radiation poisoning, I think it is. And so he kind of stops being Giant Man because he gets like cured, but because of the cell damage from A, the radiation, and B, having to constantly change sizes, he was like, yeah, no, probably a good idea for me to hang the cape up for a bit. Although I don't think it will cape. He did eventually, again, to help out the Thing, he donned his kind of superhero mantle again, taking the name of just Goliath this time. Again, it's just a thing. Just call yourself Goliath. It sounds better. Yeah, so he did that for a bit, and then he comes back in Civil War, and then he dies. He giants up, and his very last words are, "Get ready for the shortest comeback in history, Thor," and then gets killed by Thor, like literally within a panel or two, which I sent Ollie the picture, and I'm hoping he'll stick it on the on the post when we put this
on
up.
the socials.
On the socials, yeah.
I will put it
and
up.
because he dies
it is literally one panel.
It's like just gets vaporized. It is like because he gets killed in like giant mode. They can't shrink him down. So Stark has to buy 38 burial plots to bury him. and I will just caveat, it wasn't Thor. It was like this clone robot version of Thor, which obviously malfunctioned. So it wasn't the real Thor, just literally shooting a bolt of lightning through his chest. But yeah, so there you go. There's the characters. There you go. That's I think that's all the new ones who matter who are in this one.
Excellent.
There you go.
All right then. Well, shall we just
dive in?
Plow on ahead into our breakdown?
Let's go. We start with a flashback. So we open on a flashback to the night Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, went missing on a, inverted commas, business trip. A de-aged Hank Pym. Oh no, wait, no, he's not de-aged. Sorry, Hank Pym's played by Michael Douglas, is narrating us through their kind of last conversation they had with little like Tiny Hope, who's played by Madeline McGraw. So going into more detail about the nuclear warhead diffusing mission, which they touched on in the last film while it flew towards the States.
Yeah, we got a very quick.
We got a very
element
quick
of
thing.
it, didn't we?
They basically just flesh it out a bit. I mean, like what happened last time, Hank's regulator breaks, so Janet goes subatomic to stop the missile, but gets lost in the quantum realm. And then
and yeah, both Janet and Hank are. We see them in the flashback of their last conversation with Hope. Both Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas heavily de-aged.
yes.
Although clearly Michelle Pfeiffer still having had her Botox.
Well, yes. Details. Yeah, bless. But after our little flashbacks, he basically explains that Janet may be alive because Scott managed to come back from the quantum realm, and he kind of outlines that he's been thinking about it for a while, and though he shows Hope plans for a quantum tunnel, and he basically sets up the entire movie by saying, "I think we can bring her back." So great, right from the start, we've got this is what the film is going to be about.
Absolutely, and that takes us directly into the Marvel logo. So it's another one of the films that's got a little bit of a preamble to set us up, and then the Marvel logo kind of catapults us into the movie proper, which opens with Scott, played by Paul Rudd, and Cassie, played by Abby Ryder Fortson, who are playing in this kind of epic cardboard tunnel thing, assisted by Luis, played again by Michael Peña,
Legend,
who I was just the most excited to see coming back. They could have recast anyone else as long as Michael Peña was in there, to be honest.
I mean, I did love this like epic cardboard tunnel set, and I know it's because he's been
so
under
good.
house arrest, but it does hilariously make me think of this is way before COVID and everyone got locked down, but you could 100% appreciate how hard it is to entertain a 10-year-old when you can't go outside. You know, you could 100% yeah.
So did you build a giant cardboard maze?
No, because I was a kind of key worker, so I was able to go into work and escape. So poor Heidi had to put up with that.
So did Heidi build a giant?
She made she made many assault courses for them to do. So yes, it wasn't on the level of this cardboard maze, but it was there was shenanigans going on. Yes, definitely.
It does look so much fun.
Yeah, it was great.
It's so wonderful. So Luis is kind of getting involved as well, and they find their treasure, which is Scott's world greatest grandma trophy, which Cassie had bought for him, and she wants to take it in for show and tell, all of which seems kind of very weirdly unimportant, but might turn out to be important later.
Exactly. So actually really well done. Like it's played for a bit of a laugh and stuff. But yeah, it like weirdly does become actually kind of plot relevant later on.
Exactly. Yeah. We also learned that Luis is now running XCon while Scott's under house arrest. So Scott's kind of designing all of the systems for their pitches.
Yep.
But Luis is the one who's kind of running it day to day. The house arrest kind of gets set up really nice and quickly because he and Cassie go down this giant slide through the house, which again is amazing.
Yep.
And they kind of crash at the bottom and his leg goes through a fence and the FBI turn up. This is where we're introduced to Agent Wu, Jimmy Wu.
Yep.
The credits list him as. I'm not entirely sure anyone calls him Jimmy at any point. So just Agent Wu, who's played by Randall Park, who is the most wonderful comic actor. And the scenes between him and Paul Rudd, you kind of get the feeling that there's a lot of improvisation in there.
Yeah.
That they're just kind of bouncing off each other with different ideas, and particularly the scene that we'll get to right at the end when they're talking about like going out for dinner and stuff.
That again, it's one of the interactions I love. It's one of the things that made me really love the film. Just how those two interact with each other was absolutely fantastic.
And we get the brilliant moment of him being brilliant with kids.
Yes.
Of he like starts explaining to Cassie in a really accessible, child-friendly way, and then goes like way off the rails
I I,
into
I kind of think it's perfect because we got the exposition. Then we got the explanation of after Civil War what happened to him.
yes.
But I'm hoping in a less like, I know you don't like clunky exposition drops, but this felt really good. Like, and again, it was, yeah.
It was good to the point at which he turns around and goes, "You do know that violating your
Oh right,
sentence
yeah.
will result in you having 20-year prison sentence." It's like, mm, yes, yes, he
Yes.
does know that. We,
He's
but
aware.
thanks
Yes,
for
he's aware.
telling us. But does also make an important point in saying that because he used the PIM technology, Hank
Hank
and
and Hope.
Hope
Yeah.
are also on the run, and any contact with them would violate his sentence, which is brilliant because it does two jobs.
Yep.
One of which is to say he screwed over Hank and Hope, so they're probably not
Yeah.
massively happy with him,
Yep.
and also that Hank and Hope are on the
On the run.
run
Yep.
as well. So we get the kind of two important elements to, like, one of which is an ongoing plot strand and one of which is an important scene setting device, and they do it all within this kind of 2-minute scene really, which is quite impressive, including having Maggie and Paxton show up. So Judy Greer and Bobby Cannavale playing Maggie and Paxton again. They kind of arrive to collect Cassie, and Maggie is kind of she's sort of outraged on Scott's behalf.
You people can't just show up here whenever you want and search the place.
Actually, they can.
You need a warrant.
Actually, they don't.
Really? Wow.
Really, really nicely done.
And we also get the fact that actually all three of them are really good friends now. We saw them inviting Scott round at the end of Ant-Man.
Yep.
But now we're seeing that they are effectively just a family unit, and they all get on really, really well.
Again, I really like it, and it's just healthy and nicely. We don't have to deal with that. Will they? Won't they? Or maybe they'll all get back together and be. Yeah, we don't have to deal with any of that. It's just like, yeah, that's fine. They're two parents who are separated, but together, but still doing the right thing. So great.
And we don't have to deal with the whole like jealous of the new partner
yes.
or new partner hating old partner and that kind of stuff. Like, they've parked it and we're in a good place.
Yeah.
Then, Dave, it's the first time for ages. We get a montage.
We get a montage. I mean, admittedly, it's not the kind of, it's a fun montage. It's not the kind of like
It is a
Iron Man
montage.
suiting up montage. But as in, no, I'm not saying it's not a montage. I'm saying it's not the fun type of, the epic superhero like
It's a fun montage.
training montage or a suiting up montage. It's a Scott dicking around montage, but it is fun, and Scott is awesome. Yeah,
he is. I went through and listed out all of the things that he's doing,
yes.
which is actually quite a lot of stuff that they managed to put into.
I like the learning magic thing, and again, the fact that they keep on like everyone goes, "How'd you do that, Scott? How'd you do the magic?" And like,
yeah,
even like Paxton's like, "How do you do that? How do you do that?" And just everyone, whenever he does magic, is like, "Well, no, why did you do that? What are you about?" And I love how that's kind of an ongoing thing.
yeah. One of the things we see him doing, which I forgot to mention earlier with the Luis stuff, is he's working on plans for this important pitch that they've got with a company called Carapetian.
Yeah, I know what you're going to ask, and no, I'm pretty sure they just made it up for the comic. I can't think of any. If there's an obscure
really
comic thing,
weird name to make up. Like, it's like you'd have thought they would have just said like with the new Smith Tower block.
Yeah, no, I
genuinely
can't think of any kind of subtle reference for that. I can't think of anything.
And the last thing we see Scott doing is having a bath where he has this weird kind of dream of being back in the quantum realm. Then he's sort of in his own head playing hide and seek in the Pym house and finding Hope in the wardrobe, little Hope in the wardrobe. And then he sort of looks at himself in the mirror in a spectacularly unbelievable way as Janet. So he digs a phone out of the wall and he calls Hank and leaves a message, and it's just another element kind of saying like it's really clear that they haven't spoken in a very long time, that they clearly had this way of communicating with each other, but they probably haven't had any contact over the 2 years of his sentence. It's just another nice little bit of setup. And then while he's watching Animal House in his lounge, he gets like bitten
Zip.
by a mosquito, it
Yep.
seems, and he passes out in a brilliant piece of Paul Rudd slapstick.
Acting. Yeah.
It's awesome.
A quick interjection. I did Google it. I didn't find anything. The name of the project, it's a reference to Edgar Carapetian, who's a storyboard artist for Cars 3, Finding Dory, The Good Dinosaur, and a load of things. So just a reference to a storyboard artist. So that's it.
Okay, that's interesting.
There you go.
Cool. So Scott kind of passes out, and then when he wakes up, he's in a car with Hope.
Yep.
Who
it's very, very tense.
Wants to know if he really saw her mum, and yeah, she's not massively happy with him. It seems there's definitely a cold air between them, you would probably say. And then he realizes he's sort of panicking that he can't be in the car and out of the house.
Yeah, because of his tag.
And she's taken his tag off and attached it to one of the giant ants. And then he gets terrified by a pigeon and realizes he's in a shrunken version of the car, which is really funny. But then also, she's paying attention to traffic signals. She's stopped at a red light.
No, I understand this because I think this is because, well, she doesn't want to get run over by stuff going the other way, going from the side and catching her out. Whereas at least this way she can, you know where a car's going to drive. Like, as long as you stay in the middle of it, you'll be fine. So I think that's entirely down to something like that. Rather than, I don't think she's going to run a red light and think, oh, maybe the traffic camera will get me. I think it's a bit safer rather than something coming out of nowhere and just, like, the crosswind then sweeping her off.
She also throws in that when he kind of says, how do you know what I do during the day? Because the ant's been programmed to do what he does.
Yes.
She says they keep tabs on all security threats, which is sort of a theme in the MCU now. There's a number of different films where we've seen
Strange
various characters and agencies keeping tabs on others. So yes, and he apologizes for Germany, and then from what she explains, you kind of realize that he literally cost them
they lost everything,
like the company, their house, they're on the run, all of their, like, they had to essentially steal what they could of their tech and stuff, and it's understandable perhaps why they're not happy with
you can
him.
Understand it completely.
And then they stop outside this dilapidated building on the side of the road.
The building they stopped by, it contains the lab they've been building their quantum tunnel in. I mean, when they go in, Hank is about as pleased to see Scott as Hope was, probably even less so. And it's quite cool because you see lots of things around the lab as well, like lots of like embiggened batteries and things like that.
Yeah,
which is a nice little touch. One of the continuing themes of this film, like last one, is lots of size changing of normal objects, which I love. But essentially, we find out that they opened the doorway to the quantum realm, and it overloaded didn't work, but it was open for a little bit, and that triggered the message that Janet has put in Scott's head when they entangled while he was down there. Which was again, it's just underlining the plot point there of where we're going with this. We find out that Scott's alleging to Hank that he promises that he destroyed the suit, whereas Hank has a little go at him. It was my life's work. And then when they describe the dream, it kind of confirms that it really was a message from Janet. And then we get a bit of tongue in cheek about you didn't really understand what hide and seek is if you keep holding the same place over and over again. Very funny. And then they set off to get the obligatory part they need to complete the machine. And then there's the next little mission. Scott being worried that he should be at home, but they basically say, "Come on, you cost us everything. You can stick around till we can do this," which is again fair enough
because they need him.
Yeah,
they need him to kind of
be the message.
find
You got the message in his head, didn't
Janet
he? So,
as the messenger. And that's where we're also introduced to the like Hot Wheels carrying case thing, and the moment of shrinking the actual building itself, which is just brilliant. I
Yeah.
loved that moment, and particularly the kind of the comedy of Hank then just wandering over and pulling a handle
like
and
yeah.
wheeling it away.
Yeah, no, again, the Star Exchange fun. They have a lot of fun with it again in this one, and I'm glad they kept that kind of up with it. Yeah, which is good fun. We try not to think about the physics of it too much, but we head to the Wheat restaurant with Hank and Scott monitoring Hope, or Susan in her alter ego, while she makes the deal for the part they need with Sony Birch, who's played by Walter Goggins. It basically doesn't go as planned because he knows who she is. He wants to get a piece of the action, wants to auction off their work on quantum tech. She obviously turns him down. He tries to keep the money and the part, so we can see where this is going. So she walks away, then goes all perfectly set up for her to go superhero on his ass, and we get to see Hope in her Wasp outfits. Cool.
And being a superhero for the first time.
Yes.
We've seen her being like kick-ass in the original Ant-Man, but she obviously wasn't a superhero at that point.
But now she's got those changing powers.
This is the first time we actually get to see her doing stuff as the Wasp.
We get the nice little,
wings and blasters. So I take it you didn't have that tech available for me.
No, I did.
Yeah, and Hank continued to be salty with him by not letting her Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, she kicks ass, she gets the component, tries to still give them the money for it, which, she didn't need to, but she's being nice. And that's when we see...
Yeah, she's nice. She wouldn't be a hero if she's tried to steal the component after beating them all up.
But then we see the phasing, ghosty person. And, you could be forgiven at some point for thinking, oh, is this another henchman? As in, like, is this part of it? And then, like, but they're all clearly like, the fuck is that? So...
Yeah.
So, yeah, then she starts fighting and phasing in and out, and Hope's not having a good time with it, which was what triggers Hank to give Scott the prototype, keyword there, Ant-Man suit, to go and help her out, basically. So they go in, they confront her, it looks like they win, but what actually happens is she then gets in the truck and nicks the lab from Hank with a very cool phasing her hand through his face type thing.
Yeah, that doesn't look comfortable.
No.
It is a great fight, though. I really enjoyed the fight between
those two and the Ghost.
The Wasp and the Ghost. I really like that part of the fight. I wasn't that into the kind of henchman fight, the kitchen fight and stuff. There was quite a cool moment with her like making the salt cellar go big, so Usman like runs into it.
The way I think about it, it's just a generic fight, so we can see her do her shit.
Yeah, and I think partially it's why I'm slightly disappointed in it. Like,
did you want something more?
I would have liked to see her in something more than a generic fight.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yes, you're right, and the fact that now the Ghost has the lab, means that they need to go somewhere and regroup. So, despite their
Hank's like, no,
and they end up at the ex-con office.
This is great, and we get the whole team being there, don't we? Old Dave, Tip, T.I. Harris, Kurt, played by David. Oh, here we go. Dastmalchian. Malkian. Damn it, so close. Luis super excited that Hank is there again, who's again looking as thrilled as we expect to be there.
Yeah.
We get the great banter among the team with like Scott and his table. They banter amongst each other, so they've still got the same dynamics until they focus on the task at hand about getting the lab back. I mean, Luis heard they were attacked by Ghost, and Kurt chimes in with Baba Yaga from the Russian folklore type thing.
Which everybody knows is not Ghost from this film. It's John Wick.
Yes, exactly. And points out, do they have a tracker on the lab? Which obviously they did, but it was disabled. So this is the mission now. Yeah, they realize that basically they can't track it with any quantum spectrometer because they don't have one. But then this when they hit up. Oh, there's one person who could help, and obviously Hank's reluctant to this. An old colleague from Shield, which is where we're going to see Bill Foster.
There's also another moment of super clunky exposition here. They handle most of it really well, but then Hope turns around and goes,
They also looked like they were phasing.
and Scott goes,
Phasing.
Yeah.
so that they can all explain.
What? Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a little bit like, you were doing so well.
We then get to see her in a creepy weird house, and we finally see her kind of unmasked at this point, played by Hannah John Carmen.
John Kamen, I think it is.
There you go. Putting the lab down and then just phasing all over the place and like clearly in pain until she kind of crawls into some weird, funky chamber thing and like lies down, and it all goes like weird and funky.
I love the design of that chamber. Actually, it feels slightly different to a lot of those kind of things that you've seen before. Like the shape of it is a bit odd. The walls are a bit strange, and I just like that it has a slightly different feel about it to other stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. Like you say, it's not just carbon copy and the same kind of design and stuff.
So the trio of Scott, Hank, and Hope arrive at a university of some sort.
Yeah.
Unnamed university. And Scott makes the point that like wearing hats and sunglasses doesn't actually make a disguise.
So they were at a baseball game, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is really funny because I was talking to someone once who was fairly well known and saying, it can't be nice having to kind of wander around in disguise and stuff, and he said like, but as soon as you do that, people recognize you even more easily. And actually, if you just walk around as yourself and just behave normally, most people tend to leave you alone.
Yeah.
Now granted, like, he wasn't the most famous person in the world, but he was well known enough for people to kind of want to talk to him, kind of thing.
Like, unlike my friend when he was on the tube and he ran into Orlando Bloom, I think this was around Lord of the Rings as well, and he had his hat on. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He was making that very point. But anyway, in their bad disguises, they rock up to meet this old colleague, Bill Foster, as you said, played by Lawrence Fishburne.
Yep.
He's completely fascinated by Scott and the quantum entanglement and all of that kind of stuff.
Which is a fun bit as well, because we get the very valid point for Scott is, do you just put quantum in front of everything? Which is exactly what seems to happen, especially next film. Yes. Yeah.
It literally is.
Yes.
And he's also impressed by Scott becoming Giant Man in Berlin. And he mentions that he's been there too on a project called Goliath, but he never got to be as big as Scott. So that's what you were talking about earlier, of the origin of Dr. Foster.
Yeah, his superhero
being on that project, and and then they're kind of comparing how tall each of them got in sort of
bit of a size comparing. Yeah, classic.
Yes, exactly. Then unfortunately, Foster doesn't have any of the kit that will do what they need it to do. There's a bit of angry back and forth between him and Hank.
And again, I love the theme that basically Hank's a dick to everyone, it seems, and he's a pain in the ass to get along with, which he plays off perfectly.
Yes.
And I love the ongoing theme that he's not some nice guy. He's actually a massive pain in the ass to deal with.
I think part of it is because we got to know him in the previous film. And we've talked about this with several characters over the course of the MCU so far. Because we got to know Hank first and we like him and we can see how kind of brilliant he is and how much he supports other people and makes Scott into kind of who he is, and he's just a bit grumpy in Ant-Man. In this one, you actually can push him a little bit further into the sort of semi-arsehole territory, where you can understand why people would say, actually, I don't think he's very nice to
Yeah.
work for, and actually he didn't treat me very well, and that kind of thing. You can actually buy it, can't you?
Completely. He's very good at it.
And then Agent Wu turns up, having been tipped off, but it seems not about Scott, because Hank has a look at his little sort of nanny cam thing for Scott, and we see the ant playing the drums.
So what are you, 8? Yeah.
And so they have to run away, but just as they do, Foster says that they might be able to improvise a tracker using one of their regulators. And then they run away. Wu turns up. Foster covers for them, which we sort of like. There's something kind of surprising to me about him covering up.
I think
for
it's
them.
to get Janet back. Yeah. I think that's the reason. Not because it's an innocent, he may be a dick, but
I
Yeah.
don't think it's innocent in any way. Like when I was watching it, it surprised me that he covered for them. Obviously, from his point of view, he wants them to build a tracker
Yes.
and to find the
'Cause
lab
he needs them to
because he
succeed,
wants
doesn't
to
he?
capture them.
But
So
from an audience point of view, at this point, I would have thought, oh, maybe he's just doing it because he still knew Janet. So it's entirely like, oh, okay, no, this is why he doesn't like Hank, but he knows they're trying to do. He wants to save her. He respects her enough. It's fine. Obviously, then the deeper meaning is no, because he wants her for the ghost thing.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
at this point, it's nicely done. Yeah.
We also briefly get introduced to Agent Schultz, who will be important later, played by Sean Thompson Clier.
Yeah.
Who, in this scene, he literally just says, "Hold on a second," and then gets
Just cuts
shouted
off.
down by Wu. That will come around again later.
Yeah. Then when they're in their van, Hank is, as usual, pissed off with old Foster's attitude because he just doesn't. They don't like each other. It's really funny, and angry about that, saying the idea won't work because basically they phased out those parts of the suits when they upgraded this. When the upgraded suits won't have the parts they need, and then Scott kind of cops to having kept the suit. Which, in a reverse of earlier, Hank is angry about, but Scott says it's your life work and I couldn't destroy it. It's in a safe place. You sent my suit through the mail.
Yeah.
Which is where we get the call back to, the trophy is important.
Yeah.
About going to show and tell. So they have a little side quest to break into school with some hilarity of the regulator kind of acting up, and so a bit of side changing fun where he basically changes size to a small child.
I do like
I love this scene.
the moment of kind of he gets smaller and he gets tiny, then big, then enormous, then child size, and it's very good. I think the point that you just made about the kind of side quest, I think this is part of my problem with this film, is it's kind of this weird hybrid mishmash of stuff. Of like, it's not quite a heist film, it's not quite a chase film, it's not quite a thriller, it's not quite really a superhero film in the sort of classic sense. It's sort of a mishmash of all of those things, and so it feels a little bit episodic at times, of like in a very linear fashion of this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens, without there being any real kind of through flow to it, because it's constant little side quests in service of the big quest.
Yeah, I mean, we do get lots of comedy out of it though.
Yeah.
Especially with him, like I say, when they've done their mission and all the amount of, come on, you could do it, and like especially when he's running back into the van and can't get up the seat properly, and they're like, oh, he's so cranky when he comes back from school.
You want a juice box and some string cheese?
Do you really have that?
You can just see that Hank and Hope are
loving it.
And as you say, that the stuff of the kind of you can do it, Hope is just loving being so patronizing to him.
They're having a great time. It's a little bit of payback for him. And Scott's like, oh, fine, get your jokes out of the way. Again, it's a good dynamic with all of them. It's really what it works. So they really work as a kind of group and a team. But either way, mission accomplished. They got the suit back, brilliant. So to get the kind of old regulator or whatever it was, make the tracker work and go find the creepy house.
when they get there, we have Scott and Hope having a bit of a chat in the van, and it's this sort of acknowledgement that actually the thing that Hope is most upset about is not
Not being
being
called.
told
Yeah.
about Germany and not being invited to come, and that it's much less about the bigger picture of them being on the run and stuff. It's that actually she felt hurt that
Yeah.
he didn't include her,
Because they
and
were,
she does still like him.
yeah, because they were, partners in many respects, and
Yeah.
and the fact that she just upped and did it. I mean, we all know the real film reason was that they didn't want to. She wouldn't have had much screen time, and it wouldn't have justified. It would have cheapened her kind
And
of costume.
we hadn't seen the Wasp
Yeah,
at
that's
that point.
so it would
And
it would have
would have
yeah.
been, as you say, it would have cheapened her character so much to introduce this new superhero who gets like a minute of
Because
screen time.
it would have just been the airport scene, and like
And
we've
then she'd
already
have got
introducing
arrested.
Spider-Man in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just feels like she wouldn't have got it wouldn't have justified it at all. So I completely get film-wise why they did it. But yeah, no, it's a nice little, like you say, she does still like him. It's just kind of you see a bit of a thawing, but then we get to do the fly-in with Scott again, a bit of a Ulysses S.R. Ant comedy naming of ants again, and yeah. But they find the lab, and obviously we're like, it's going too well. Something's going to happen. Ghost comes up and knocks them out.
I just love the fact that there's two of them in there. They see Ghost in her chamber thing, apparently asleep, and so they both turn their back on her.
Yep, they're not cut out for this spycraft
just
crap.
Seems ill-advised.
Yep. So then they kind of wake up attached to chairs. We get Ghost in a very playful introduction to Scott, and a little bit
she's
of a
quite sweet,
yeah,
isn't she?
very sweet at this because she kind of like looks at him and like really likes him. It looks right, kind of cutesy, but then she's a bit phasey and starts breaking down a bit. Yeah, and it kind of like
kind of get the sense of you get a little bit of the sense of who she is as a person.
Yeah,
that actually she hasn't really been anywhere other than kind of being used. We'll get the backstory in a second, but
in a second, yeah.
There's something childishly cute about her here, as she clearly sort of fancies Scott.
Yes,
and to me, it didn't feel like it was her putting on this performancey thing. It was much more genuine that actually she sort of doesn't really know how to talk to a boy that she likes.
Yeah,
kind of feel.
Completely agree on that. Yeah, then the others kind of wake up and we get the big, like you say, villain reveal.
I have to jump in before this bit because that's the other thing that really annoyed me. So Scott tries to shout at the other two to wake up, but obviously they're all unconscious. And Ava turns to him and says, like, I don't think they're just going to wake up like that. That's not how it works. And then somehow when she kicks their chairs, that makes them not unconscious.
I love how these little minor things are the things that annoy you about it rather than anything.
I mean, you should know, like, how many episodes have we done now? This is like episode 24, and you've not yet learned.
I have learned. I
just little things.
It just makes me chuckle. It just makes me chuckle. It's the really little things, yeah. But either way, they wake up, and then we get the monologue, and we get a bit of the backstory from Ava, which is quite nice. Again, underlining Hank's a bit of a dick, allegedly, kind of thing. Tragic backstory. Parents died, and she gets all phasey. We get a bit more explanation about it, which is kind of useful.
I like that they give it like a proper medical term of the molecular disequilibrium.
But they didn't put quantum in it.
They didn't.
No.
They didn't. That's true. I just like that they tend to do this in the MCU of, even though it's complete rubbish science, they do give it like a
sciencey name.
A name that sounds like it
sounds plausible.
It sounds like it would be called that if it was real.
They follow on the backstory then with the standard Shield had weaponized her, and it's not entirely clear if it was the Shield aspect or the Hydra undercover aspect in Shield that was using her, but either way, she's weaponized. after Winter Soldier, S.H.I.E.L.D. collapses and Foster kind of takes her in, builds her the cell in the house to try and do it, to try and help and stop it, but it's not stopping it, it's just slowing it, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the idea, isn't it? That the suit
helps and the chamber
was
helps.
designed to stop her phasing,
Yep.
but didn't work fully.
Yep.
And now she's in a sort of a situation where when she's outside of the suit, she's essentially completely unable to control her.
It's like it's accelerating, isn't it? Like, you know, she's
Yeah.
she's getting worse and it's kind of self-perpetuating and stuff like that. But the monologue kind of continues, but then is interrupted comedically as usual with Scott's phone going off, and it's just Cassie's can't find her football boots. Sorry, soccer shoes.
Yes.
In American things.
Soccer shoes. Oh, that made me so angry.
It's America. It's fine. And
no, it's not. No, it's not.
It's
fine.
set in America, so it's okay.
I allow Americans a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
They are called football boots.
I mean, they are called football boots. Yes.
Soccer shoes.
Either way, Scott gives his super sick line, which they'll come back to you later. Yeah, and then they get back to it. Hank kind of says that he wants to help. Foster's like, yeah, whatever. Kind of explains their plan about using kind of siphoning energy from Janet, who's been like, I guess, like a sponge because she's been in the quantum realm so long. Hank's like saying, "Oh no, that ripped Janet apart," but yeah, weirdly the bad guys don't seem to mind that. I mean, I guess I put that down to her desperation, or maybe that he doesn't quite believe them, because I don't think they're intrinsically evil. They're not like
no, they're not.
The end goal is to help her. The only baddies are the kind of gangster guys, I guess.
Yeah, and even then,
it's
like they're not proper bad guys.
They're just trying to get in on the quantum stuff, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, they're trying to make money.
Yeah.
And
so they're not like nefarious.
They have guns, so they're definitely the baddest people. But yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned it a little bit at the start that this isn't a film where there is a big bad.
Yeah.
There is like Ghost and there's Foster who are trying to do the right thing for her, which includes trying to use this quantum energy to save her. And Foster's point, when Hank says like, "Oh, it'll rip Janet apart," Foster's point is, you don't know that.
Yep.
And it might not.
It might
and
not,
obviously,
exactly.
If there's like a 50-50 chance that it'll rip Janet apart, Hank is naturally going to bet on the 50% chance that it will.
Yeah.
And Foster is immediately gonna kind of cling to the chance that it won't.
That it won't, yeah.
But it does make logical sense. And so, as you say, yeah, they're not bad guys. They're just trying to achieve their own goals.
Exactly. And then this is when the epic escape with the very predictable Hank starts having a heart attack happens, but Foster has, like you say, just enough compassion to get the heart medication, inverted commas, which is a tin full of ants, a giant ants, which is great.
Yes, great. I love it's essentially a booby trap.
It's a booby trap thing with loads of ants. It's like the
tin of ants, so that as soon as you open it, the ants get huge.
And then Hank puts his little thing on his ears so he can control them. Yeah, I love it. And then we kind of flash back to the so they're in the lab now because they've made their escape, where Hank kind of explains that the dad was a traitor. Where I don't know, traitor, but I guess we'll see.
Traitor seems extreme.
Yeah, it seems extreme, doesn't it? It seems extreme.
The story that they're telling so far. So I don't know if he was or he wasn't, but it feels like an extreme choice.
Yeah,
to make Ava's dad a traitor. Like maybe he was like a backstabber or something like that. But traitor's
probably a little too harsh, isn't it?
Extreme.
But either way, they're kind of ready to go now. Hope's like understandably nervous about seeing her mum again, and Scott kind of like really sweetly reassures her. But then Louise explains that Scott's made a mistake on the drawing for the pitch tomorrow. So it's like, again, it's a really innocuous kind of thing. But then he tells him where the lab is, which then it kind of messes everything up. But like, it's a really little minor thing as well. But yeah, as Louise is kind of leaving, old Birch arrives at the ex-con office to confront them with his two associates. Oozman, was it Oozman?
Yep, Oozman.
By Divian Ladwa. Have I said that correctly?
That's about right.
I think that's right. And Antoliov, who's played by Goran Kostic. Thank you for phonetically spelling that on the script. So back at the creepy house, Foster breaks it to Ava that she doesn't have long left to live, and Ava's getting a bit more extreme, deciding to go over like Cassie, and
she just turns around and she's like,
She's
"Well,
got a
I'll
daughter."
kill his daughter
Yeah.
then," essentially. And Foster's like,
no, he's
don't
like,
think that's right."
again, underlining this whole they're not baddies. He's appalled at this and talks her out of it, and she's like, "All right, fine, we'll find another way." So again, just underline the fact that they're not like major evil people here. They still have standards,
and she does listen.
And again,
to
she
him
listens. That's the point as well.
Like, she doesn't turn around and say, "Oh well, screw you, I'm going to go do it anyway,"
or says, "Oh, okay, I won't do that then." And then the next scene is her capturing her daughter or something like that. So, and which is what they could have. But I guess because also they kind of did that in the first one with Yellow Jacket going to Cassie's. So it's nice that they avoided it.
Yeah, exactly. I think they couldn't have done that in this film because it would have been really stupid that Cassie gets threatened
again
twice in 2 films. But I also like the way that they went about it, because the natural bad guy thing to do is to say, "Oh well, I'll go after his daughter." But the way that they did it with Foster kind of saying, "No, look, I'm not going to help you do this."
So yeah, that's again another kind of one of these brilliant scenes. We go back to the X-Gon office where the gang are all given truth serum, which isn't truth serum because truth serum doesn't exist. By Usman.
Yeah, Usman is
very clear,
adamant,
not truth serum. But this does lead into again an amazing Michael Peña story that explains where Scott is emotionally speaking. So it's where him getting round the truth serum kind of thing by answering the question in the wrong way, but then accidentally tells Dave and Kurt the company was going to go out of business, so they don't learn the pitch, which gets them to kind of argue again and more bants. But then they do finally tell them where they actually are. Yeah, which is again a genius scene because that was a brilliant one they did last one. So I'm really glad they found a way of getting a similar one in this one with it, but it being different.
Yes, absolutely. And the whole truth serum thing I find brilliant because truth serum doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist.
No, genuinely,
it's a film. Exist. It's one of those film things, isn't it? Yeah.
But sodium pentothal is a drug that was used mostly by the Soviets to basically it's an anesthetic drug.
Yeah.
And it can make it harder for people to lie. So it doesn't make people.
It doesn't compel you to tell the truth. It just makes it harder to lie.
Exactly. And so I love the way they play on it in this film. It's very well put together.
Yeah, and we get a lot of callbacks to this little joke. It's really, they keep this going towards the end, which is very funny. But either way, after we've had that awesome scene, Ghost or Baba Yaga turns up and gets the location of the lab and then slashes his tires so they can't kind of chase him. And this is where he calls Agent Schultz, telling him where the lab is on the agreement that Schultz gives him the lab when they get it.
Yeah, so it's Birch is clearly one of those super connected people.
Yeah, who's got people in his pocket.
Kind of do whatever he needs to get his way.
But then so then they know where the Pims are, and we get a quick look at Wu practicing close-up magic online before Schultz tells them they have this lead. Again, really nice little callbacks to jokes.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, it's the thing that this film excels at, and in the same way that Ant-Man excelled at, actually, is the number of jokes they have, like long-term setups and payoffs for, and constant callbacks to over the course of the film, and it's brilliantly done. They execute it so well throughout this film.
Yeah, and like you can tell the cast having a lot of fun with it as well, I think, and also because a lot of the cast are already established in this as well. That means they can be a bit freer with this kind of stuff, which is great. But yeah, either way, after that we get back to the lab where they now finally they power up the tunnel, then it powers down immediately. But then Scott starts acting a bit weird and starts just fixing the algorithm. But we slowly realise that it's actually Janet who's inhabiting Scott's body and messing around with him. You know, we get the Janet explaining that she put an antenna in Scott's head so they can track her in the quantum realm because, you know, science. And then they work quickly to calculate the exact coordinates with some great dialogue, which I'm sure you'll hate. And then,
Just, I mean, it's bad dialogue.
yeah, but
It's like there is the how we calculate coordinates, and they're like, oh, look at us two fighting again. It's like they weren't even fighting. They they said, I think it should be this, and the other one said, well, I think it should be this. Let's compromise. Like, that's not a fight.
yeah.
Since when is that a fight?
A very low
So
grade
yeah,
fight.
the dialogue is bad, but
But-
it does give them an opportunity to put a clock.
I was gonna say we need a clock, don't we?
So they have 2 hours from this point
Yep.
to come
Boom.
and find her, or she'll be lost for 200 years.
Because the stars won't align again, or whatever the reason was.
Yes,
But
the
there you go.
quantum stars.
The quantum stars won't have aligned, like the ether and all that stuff with the convergence. There you go from Dark World. But she kind of basically Scott comes back into his own body, having no memory of anything. And says, "Oh, well, guys, why are we in this room now?"
Yeah.
Which again, Paul Rudd very good at doing.
Yep.
Hank then starts to power up the tunnel. Scott briefs Hope on what to expect before Louise calls him to tell them the feds are on the way. Yeah, dropping some truth bombs. And Scott tells them they have to go and he has to run home. Basically, he's like, "Can I borrow the suit?" They ignore him, tell him not to come back because they're a bit pissed off with him, understandably. Again, he's just done all that work to repair it, and he messed up again.
And it's that, again, from Hope, it's the disappointment in her voice.
Yeah.
When she
I'm
tells
not
him
angry,
to come
I'm
back.
disappointed.
It's the, like, seriously, you've done this again. You've screwed me over.
Seriously, we had this.
And
yeah,
I just don't want anything to do with you. Just go away and don't come back.
Go away. I'm going to try and get my mum. We'll get the suit off you later. Boom. Off you go.
And he does. He
does.
goes. He flies off. So the second half of the film starts with Cassie, Maggie, and Paxton dropping in to get Cassie's boot. Cassie goes upstairs and finds the giant ant in the bathroom having a bath. Just as Agent Wu arrives, we get this lovely kind of little moment on the staircase where Cassie's like blocking him off and not letting him go upstairs and saying, "Oh no, my dad's super sick and he's bathed everywhere," and she delays him just long enough that when he gets to the top of the stairs, Scott is kind of coming out of the bathroom. And I haven't quite worked out whether Cassie saw her dad get back and was just stalling on his behalf, or whether she was just kind of lying and trying not to get Wu to go upstairs.
I think it was that one.
Her dad wasn't there.
Yeah, I think it's that one. I don't think she saw him. I think she was just doing that small child thing of, I don't want you to go in there. If I try and convince you enough, you will not do it. I think that's what she was doing. And it just obviously...
But it's very sweet. And
it's very
the look
sweet
on her face when she gets up there of like...
And then it is Scott, her little smile.
Daddy didn't get caught.
Yeah, that was good.
And then at the exact same time that's happening, Hank shrinks the lab down to find that they've been completely surrounded by the feds.
By the feds, yeah.
Which Cutty did make the point of, like, why did he not just make the lab big again?
Yeah, well, yes, that could have been.
Block them off.
Yeah.
And,
possibly a bit of
lock
shock.
the doors. Yes. Although I guess, if he'd left it big, then Ghost could have just got in.
Just got in, exactly.
And everything else. So as long as it's small, yes, he has the problem of not being able to get Janet back, but also Ghost can't kill her.
Yeah.
And then we get Wu checking that everything is legit with Scott's ankle tag, and he leaves, and we immediately kind of ping back to the woods again, and Ghost does the like phasing through the neck thing on Schultz.
Yeah.
So he passes out and she just takes
gets the lab. Yeah.
And then we get this super sweet chat between Scott and Cassie. I love this moment. It's one of those nice, quiet scenes in the middle of a film when there's been lots of stuff going on, and you just get the kind of sweet innocence of a child and her relationship with her dad. And, she wants to be his partner because she wants to make sure that he's got someone to watch over him and to watch his back.
Yeah.
Her performance in this, Abby Fortson's performance in this scene, is incredible for a child.
Yeah.
The little way that he chuckles and her little kind of
Don't laugh. I'd be a great partner.
Oh, Peanut.
it's so hurt in the way that children, when they get to that kind of age and they desperately want to be grown-ups, and they think of themselves as more grown up now, and just the way she delivers that line, it's such a sweet kind of, I really could be your backup, I could be your partner, even if we as adults know she couldn't. She 100% believes she could be the Wasp, essentially. And I really like the way that he responds and kind of says, yes, you absolutely could, but I would be a terrible dad for letting you do it.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
such a, again, it reinforces that relationship that they have, that actually he is a brilliant dad, because he's not saying, don't be stupid, you're 10 years old, you couldn't be my partner.
Yeah.
He's saying, I can't let you do that.
Yeah.
Importantly, he's very downbeat, and he's beating himself up for what he hasn't been able to do for Hope and for Hank, and he keeps screwing things up, and she believes in him, and actually that's kind of what he needs to give him the push into the taking action for the second half of the film.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a really sweet scene. Really sweet scene. And like I say, it really gives him the impetuous, and it pushes him on to the next stage of his journey, kind of thing, And the next one we get is we get a reversal, because at the police station, Hope does her thing where she breaks him out of her handcuffs. Again, proving that she's a bit kick-ass. And they're, trying to work out how to bust out. But then Scott has actually, done from the first film, where Hank and Hope kind of broke him out. Well, sorry, Hank broke him out of prison. We get the reversal of that, where he gets his FBI uniform, and there's ants all over security cameras. Yeah, good little, again.
And he drops the suit off for Hope, doesn't he? In the same way that Hank dropped the suit off for him.
And then he gives Hank a disguise, which has, I think, does it have glasses as well as a hat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They get out. They get to the van. They have a little moment, and Hank kind of prompts them to move. But then they're getting followed by the minor baddie Birch's cronies. So the cronies are following them, and Hank's got a ant nav following them with a fun use of using the flying ants to make arrows, and to track the building, while Foster is getting ready to do the extraction process for Ava. So they're all kind of setting themselves up. The timer is counting down still. Timer is counting down. And you can tell we're getting towards the end of the film, because Scott makes his list, checking off what we know what's going to happen, gives us all the parameters of what's going to happen, what can't happen, all that kind of stuff. So which is good. Establishing that the lab has to be fully grown for the vehicle to return from the quantum realm. They can't be shrunk.
Which is the key bit.
Very key bit.
The next... Well, for the rest of the film.
For the rest of the film, yeah. This is the kind of climax, leading to the climax, isn't it?
The most important element out of all of this is that they need to get the lab back to full size.
Yep. Hank says, they need both Ant-Man and the Wasp outside to protect the building from Ghost. So, because he's the one going inside to go get his wife.
Or more to the point, it's the other way around, isn't it? It's the fact that Hank says he has to be the one that goes into the void.
Yes.
Because they need both Ant-Man and the Wasp on the outside protecting it. And he's absolutely right, because it's an absolute show on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
While he's in the void.
Yeah, and he gets a bit mental, doesn't it? And Luis turns up in his van to help.
And that takes us into the final part of the film, which is essentially just one long action
sequence, isn't it?
for
Yeah.
the next like 45 minutes, 35 minutes plus credits.
Yep.
35, 40 minutes, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So here's how we get set up for this last section of the film. Hope and Luis are in the van in an alley outside or next to where the lab building is. Scott is in an abandoned building next door. Foster and Ava are in the lab, which is where Hank is heading.
Yep.
And then it sort of kicks off by the ants disabling the tunnel. So Ghost heads off to find the source. She knows that either Hank or Scott or Hope, I guess, will be controlling the ants.
Yeah.
So she goes off to find them and stop them getting the ants to destroy all of the tech. And so she heads off, and Hank basically uses some giant ants to corner Foster and send him away in a lift.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Hank gets a suit, which is exactly what Luis wants.
Yeah, Luis wants a suit, yes.
Luis is desperate for a suit. There's an angle on Michael Peña in this little section when he's like,
I wish I had a suit. I would even like a suit with like minimal powers, you know? Or maybe even just a suit with no powers.
And you can see in the foreground of that shot, you can see Evangeline Lilly starting to like
crack up,
laugh. And I love moments like that in these films, and there were several moments like that in the first Ant-Man, weren't there? Between Paul, or we pointed one out in Civil War as well, of Paul Rudd making Elizabeth Olsen giggle,
yeah,
with his like "I know you, you're great too" kind of thing. Yeah, I just love that angle, and obviously just love Michael Peña desperate for a suit. Hank promises to help find a cure for Ava when he gets back, then essentially says, like, you need to leave now because I'm going into the tunnel. He sets his little 15-minute timer.
Excellent.
And disappears into the tunnel. It's not entirely clear, or it wasn't to me when I watched it through the first time, what that 15 minutes refers to. Because initially it seems like what it means is like you can't be in the quantum realm for longer than 15 minutes kind of thing. But actually it's just the time that's left on that 2-hour clock that was started earlier.
Yeah,
I just
probably
think it was a little bit unclear what that actually was at the time. Whatever it is, we know that there is 15 minutes until something bad
happens. Yeah, we've got the deadline.
Exactly.
So we've got our 15-minute timer. Ghost and Ant-Man start scrapping, and Scott's suit continues to malfunction because prototype. Yeah, and Scott kind of tries to urge people to hurry up because he's getting trashed.
He's getting absolutely like
he's getting trashed.
His suit is not working, so he can't do any of the cool fighty stuff that he knows how to do, and so she's just phasing through everything.
Yeah,
and
it's not going his way
kicking
at all.
him, and
But as soon as Hank's in the tunnel, they shrink it, and Luis grabs it. So basically, the fight with Ava was just misdirection. Another kind of theme with this, with the magic and misdirection and sleight of hand and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yep, absolutely. And then Luis, having grabbed the lab, he kind of jumps in the van with Hope, and they start leaving. And Birch turns up with his
cronies,
2 mates, Anatolov and Usman, and then suddenly this whole army of other people, of like 3 or 4 giant cars and some motorbikes and all kinds of stuff. So we're into like the next section of this last portion, which is the car chase scene.
Yeah, with loads of disposable mooks that we can, like they can like you say, lots of size changing, dodging, diving, and we can take them out in various hilarious ways.
And interesting visual effects, practical effects combinations in here.
Which what you like?
Where, yeah, I mean, some of the visual effects isn't awesome, but I love the fact that there are a lot of, I think all of the car flips and the car crashes are practical.
Are they real? Yeah.
And you can see that they're practical. They're really, I don't know.
You can tell. You
about
can tell,
practical
can't you?
effects
Between
that you can just see. My problem with them a little bit is that what tends to happen is that it's a CGI car up to the point at which it crashes because of the way that they have to kind of set up the stunts. So it always used to be that if you were going to have a car crash, like when in the 80s, when every single car chase ended with a car
crash
like
or a flip or
barrel
something.
rolling through the sky, there would always be a ramp that was hidden behind a bunch of boxes, and they would just take off. Now the ramp is hidden by visual effects instead of by boxes. But what that means is that actually they can do more spectacular things, like kind of there's one of the cars that gets like pinged right up into the air and over on its side down a hill. And obviously to do that, you need quite a large mechanism
to do that,
to make it fly up into the air, which means in order to see cars driving past it and up to it, you have to create them in CGI up to the point at which the car gets flipped.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a few points in this where the CGI car behaves slightly weirdly.
Yeah.
The most obvious one is when Birch's car crashes. It just looks really odd in the kind of second or so before it actually impacts, because they're having to create the sort of false motion of the car to make the CGI car conform to where the practical car is going. And it's just little things like that that just, I know, I get bothered by little things.
Super little thing as well.
It's little things like that that I notice and which I find frustrating when they are doing such an amazing job with the special effects.
I say, are you saying that it would bother you less if the rest of the special effects were a bit crap?
No, I don't think so. I think it's more that they lessen the impact of the practical effects, I think, slightly, because every single strong piece of practical effects is preceded by a slightly dodgy piece of visual effects. And so it's that combination that I think I struggle with a little bit.
Yeah. We kind of flip-flop, don't we, now, between car chase on the outside world and then Hank is in the kind of quantum realm starting his search quest, almost getting eaten by a tardigrade? What's the name of it?
Tardigrade.
It's the big
yes,
bug,
I only know what that's
thing.
called because
you Googled it?
Whenever I watch the film for the second time when we're prepping this, I watch it kind of all the way through once, and then I watch it through kind of in chunks to break it down. And I always watch it with the subtitles on the second time I watch it. And it says that the tardigrade makes a noise, so it like describes the noise that it makes and says that it's a tardigrade that's making it.
And that's how
like,
you did it.
Oh, cool. Okay. That thing is a tardigrade, which I then looked up, and turns out tardigrades are actual things, but they're not subatomic things.
No.
They are just things.
It's tiny. There you go. So you got the name.
There you go, everyone at home. You learnt something new.
Something interesting. And yeah, so we do that bit. He carries on. We flip back. We get more car chase, bike chasey, cool stuff. Stanley's cameo. Stanley's cameo.
It is a good one.
It is a good one. Yeah, it is a good
There's
one.
also a great montage on the extras on Disney Plus of all of the alternate versions of the lines of this scene. So it's literally just a minute long of Stan saying like,
what is
"Oh,
dialogue?
it's this thing," or "Oh, it's this thing," and some of them are really funny. Some of them are a lot funnier than "Oh, the '60s were
Yeah.
crazy, but I'm paying up
I'm
for
paying
them
for it
now,"
now.
or whatever it was.
Yeah. And we get Ghost doing his awesome hopping on a bike. She and then there's the giant Pez signature thing of this: throw something kind of pop culture or inane and make it massive. Great. And then with Scott on the like big flatbed truck, kind of skating it like a skateboard with all the glitching suit and stuff like that. So yeah, with the continuation of this kind of long car chase, I guess. Aren't we with the landmarks at this point? Aren't we? Because we're in San Francisco, aren't we? So
yeah, that's right.
because I remember because I've actually driven down these places, so it's nice.
Have you?
When I
have
was
you?
many when I was like it was a holiday with my parents, so I was very young, but it has always stuck in my head that I've been to these places. Like when I was watching The Rock, which is my most favorite film ever, and having been to all those places in San Francisco, I was like, yeah, I know that place. But anyway, more shenanigans, chases, riding a truck like a skateboard, great fun. Then we jump to Hank reaching the void, the quantum void, with 5 minutes left on the clock and crashing.
Yes.
Luis realizes he's got the remote for the lab. Scott tells him how to get his new car, so about the little Hot Wheel thing. Then he gets involved in his own little car chase through San Fran, and Ross kind of rescues him in this chase. But it all ends up with Birch getting the lab. He's down on the waterfront at this point. He gets on his little ferry. Scott tries to chase after him, but we keep getting the hilarious scene where all his ants get eaten by kind of seagulls until we get Antonio Banderas, who then gets eaten by
who then gets eaten pretty much straight away as well.
So he goes giant to get him down.
So I have a question.
Yep.
That I meant to ask you at the beginning, but I'll bring up now because
I think I know what the question is, but go on, ask away.
We had Ant-Man, right? And then you told me a while back about Giant Man.
Yep.
And I laughed because it seemed like a really lame name of just very descriptive. But
Circus of Crime, carry on.
Was Giant Man a separate character to Ant-Man? Or has he always been just, if Ant-Man gets big, he's called Giant Man?
It was Hank Pym. When he was Ant-Man, he always went small. When he was Giant Man, he went big. They were two different parts of his superhero career. Like different powers. But
right.
He was the same.
So they weren't combined in the way that they are here.
Yeah, no, they weren't.
You can switch between Giant Man and Ant-Man.
He was, it was...
They were two separate...
It was still him. It was still the same guy. But, like in the Avengers cartoons, he does switch between Giant Man and Ant-Man depending on what mood he's in.
Right.
But as far as I remember, he was always, when he was Ant-Man in the comics, and then when he got the ability to grow big, he could then do both. But he would be just Giant Man, I think. So, yeah.
So it is sort of technically, Scott is both Ant-Man and Giant Man at the same time.
Yeah, just depends what costume.
When he emerges from the water here, he is
Giant Man. Yeah.
As opposed to Giant Ant-Man.
Yes. He's Giant Man when he's like that. Because in like I said in the comics, the Giant Man costume was different to Ant-Man's costume. Because Ant-Man has the little funky hat.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's kind of what I was driving at. Was when I say were they separate, I think that's what I was getting at. Is that they weren't,
because this is the same costume, just big combined. Or small. Whereas in the comics, Ant-Man's costume was kind of like it is now, with a big funky helmet on, so he could communicate with the ants. But then when he Giant Man, it was like a mask, and it was just bigger. Because again, in the comics they don't. Because in this they go with the whole he's always in a sealed helmet. Because just to get around that whole breathing air that's a different size and all that kind of fun stuff. Whereas in the comics you didn't have any of that crap because they didn't care about it. Because at the time, obviously these are old, so they didn't think about it. Yeah, so we get Giant Man having a little swim after him, and then
and the thing where they're like, "Oh, look, it's a whale breaching," and it's like, no, it's clearly Scott swimming in a really weird way.
Yep,
because no one swims with their feet pointing out like that. That's very strange.
Very weird.
But he gets the lab. I love the moment he gets the lab back
Yes.
when he just like
Dunk.
flicks him over.
Yes, it's
He's
great,
like,
isn't it?
No, that doesn't belong to you. And then he just pokes him. And he
I
falls
thought he was
over.
going to flick
I love
him
that.
proper into the water, but he doesn't. He just
It
knocks
would
him
have been
down.
great, wouldn't it? So then we skip to the quantum realm again, and just like Scott warned earlier, Hank starts kind of losing his mind, and he ends up in this sort of a weird dreamscape in his house, kind of like where we saw the stuff in the flashback at the start of the film.
Yep.
He sees Hope, he sees Scott, and then he sort of gets saved by this mysterious hooded figure who
looks a little ghosty,
little bit like Ghost. And she uses some like powers. She kind of touches him on the temples, and all of a sudden he's back to normal, and it turns out it's Janet.
Yay!
Janet with superpowers.
With like weird
And
quantum-y stuff.
yeah. And so they are ready to go back to Bigness, but when they get in the little vehicle thing,
the lab isn't ready.
It says like, "Oh, I'm sorry, the lab is not ready."
We can't find it. Yeah.
Then Giant Man has the lab, and he's kind of made it back to shore, but he's about to pass out from being the size that he is, which again was something that was reiterated to us.
Yeah, because I think he's got bigger as well now, so he's so it's kind of taking a bit of draining him, isn't it? And
yeah, and so we saw him have some sort of a reaction to that in Civil War, but it was very light. And then in this, he told us he slept for 3 days after becoming Giant Man.
Yeah.
In the scene that he had with Foster.
Yeah.
Back at the university. And so he's sort of just about to pass out when he gets to the docks, and he just manages to drop the lab and kind of flick it away from the edge of the water, which is probably important because otherwise when it gets big, it would just fall into the bay.
Exactly. It'd be in the water and it just gets flooded and everyone would,
And then he passes out and he just falls back over into the water.
So Hope dives into to try and rescue him. Simultaneously, before Louise can get the lab safe, Ghost nicks the remote and, like, no hesitation, instantly makes it big. Like, because she's clearly desperate because she's getting more and more, like, discombobulated.
Well, and it doesn't matter to her either, because obviously she's just going to phase through the wall if it gets big and, like, is about to hit her. She can just phase through the wall.
Yeah,
so she's not worried about like it getting bigger and hitting her in the face and crushing her and stuff.
And like everyone around her diving out of the way of this massive building suddenly appearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now the lab is biggened again. Hank and Janet can start kind of coming back. So like I said, we do proper jump between all this stuff now. Hope fixes Scott's regulator, saves him. Louise then gets stopped by Birch, and there's a remaining henchman, but gets rescued by Dave and Kurt, who tase them, and Louise punches Birch out. So
we get that nice kind of hero moment.
The hero moment, yes,
as he like swings the punch and knocks Birch out.
Boom, very satisfying. Foster then catches them all up, chasing Ava into the building to try and kind of stop her, and she's proper mental at this point. So Ava turns on the machine, starts kind of extracting the quantum energy from Janet, who kind of feels it because she's in the little pod thing, and you can see it's
she starts kind of glitching in the pod, doesn't she?
Scott and Hope arrive. They team to fight Ava, while disabling the machine. Kind of it ends with Hope kind of in the way as the machine starts coming back. So Scott does his epic jump where he jumps, he giant mans, pushes her out of the way, and then kind of shrinks again. And save her, and then we get the big reunion.
The one thing that I'm confused about in all of this design for the quantum tunnel is they don't seem to have considered what it's going to be like when the thing comes back, because no one is in the way when they get back, because Scott has obviously managed to rescue Hope, and Ghost is phasing anyway, and yet the pod kind of flies off the end of its runway thing.
I
and
suspect
just smashes into the wall.
a lot of their planning was obviously towards we need to get in there, but probably very little thought to a safe exit, a safe egress. Yeah.
I loved it because it was just one of those moments where it's like, oh, we did not think this
Didn't
one
think this
through
one through.
properly. We should have put some like big soft buffers at the other end of
Yes,
this.
a big crash mat or something.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And
But
Ava,
yes, time for the big reunion.
Reunion, yeah, exactly. So like kind of Ava, like again, all Phasian mental at this point, interrupts, but Janet kind of basically just does her mind finger power thing, which basically she imparts part of the quantum stuff she's obviously been absorbing. She does what they said they were going to do, kind of thing, but she does it to her, so it kind of stops her phasing. So there you go.
Yes,
Great. Again, I like it because it's what she would do because she's kind of not a nasty person, and it's So she saves the day. She saves the villain, redeems the villain, I guess.
and I should say as well, the reunion is very well handled.
Yes.
It's a nice moment between Hope and her mum. There's a kind of funny moment of Hank kind of emerging from the crash and being like, and me too as well.
Yeah, and me. Yeah, don't
and
forget me.
and the only bit I'm not a massive fan of is the whole like, oh, hi, it's nice to meet you. Oh, well, I guess we've already met. It just sounds a bit weird,
Yeah.
but it's still a nice moment. And then at this point, once Janet has saved Ava and everything else, Luis comes in and kind of says like, oh, and because there's this great big giant lab that everyone's
the
looking
cops
for
coming.
that's just grown up on the bay, the police are coming, and so everyone
And of course, we
realises
haven't
they
touched
have
on
to
it.
leg it.
We haven't touched on it, but the TV cameras have been on. So like when Scott went big, people have seen this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's been on the news and stuff, hasn't it? Yeah, that's a good point.
And Cassie has little smiles when she sees him and stuff like that, and Wu's like, "What?
Yeah.
What?" So yeah, they always have to run. So you got Dave and Kurt have got Birch captured. Usman and Antonov have the truth serum, which is real, so they confess to the cops.
Yeah, just that moment of Usman going, "Oh, it really is truth serum."
Yeah,
is another great payoff to a joke that came before.
Yep,
they did a really, really good job with it. Wu chases down Ant-Man, who's been spotted kind of elsewhere in the city. Well, Giant Man has been spotted elsewhere in the city, and he gets there and he's sort of essentially backed up against the building, and we see Scott running away in his pants. And there was a moment here where, knowing that Wu was trying to catch Scott because he believed that Scott was Ant-Man and Scott was in the bay and everything else, and he's trying to catch him, I kind of really wanted this to be Luis.
yeah, that would be funny, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That, like, they had given the costume to Luis so that he could distract Wu while Scott
and have a costume.
Home. And have a costume, have a suit for 5 minutes. But as it is, it just sort of deflates on him, which to me makes absolutely no sense anyway. So in my mind, it is Luis who's got that one. I've just decided.
That's what you decided.
That's how it goes. We see Hope kind of collect the empty and shrunken suit and fly it back to Hank and Janet, where all three of them get collected by the 3 ex-con people in their van with the comical horn.
Which is weirdly key to the next film. Or, the Avengers, the final Avengers film.
Yes.
Yeah. Foster then escapes with Ava, refusing to leave her, and it's kind of cutesy little, like, hug and stuff like that.
It's quite sweet, isn't it?
No, I think it's sweet. I'm not taking a piss. I mean, I genuinely because, he was there for her. And it's not weird either. It's not like weird old man, young girl type thing either. It's genuinely looks like...
No, there's a very
fatherly, that's it. It's fatherly, daughterly
link
is the thing, isn't it? Which I guess is, again, it's one of the themes of this with mothers, fathers, daughters and stuff, and family. So it's... Yeah, so it carries on there, which is, again, really, really, really nice. And then by the time Wu gets to Scott's house, he's playing the drums like the ant was earlier.
Yeah.
And then again, we get the payoff with the them taking the ankle bracelet on and getting the whole "I'll be seeing you again," and then Scott's like,
Where will you be seeing me again?
Like, in general, I'll see, like, the next time you do something bad, I'll be there to catch you.
You'll be watching in that.
To
How you were inviting me somewhere.
and just completely takes him out the knees with the.
I
love it.
It's the sweetness that Randall Park has, the kind of lightness of touch and the funniness and everything else that Randall Park gives the character.
Yep.
Makes this moment really work.
And then especially right at the end,
that whole kind of like,
are you interested?
But maybe we could be friends.
Yeah. I'm really glad that he comes back in WandaVision as well. But yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because I, for the longest time, could not place who he was. And was like,
in
it's
WandaVision.
cool. Randall Park is playing this character. And then like halfway through, I was like, oh, yeah, it's that dude.
That dude, I remember now, yeah.
And then we're into the
wrap up. Yes.
Which is it's more of a wrap up than we've had for any of these films recently, I think, in terms of kind of just rounding off all of these stories. And we rattle through it quite quickly. We have Scott, his sort of first thing that he does now he's got his ankle bracelet off is he goes to Maggie and Paxton's house to see Cassie.
Yep.
Which is obviously something that, I mean, it's sweet and lovely, and it's a great moment in this film, but obviously it has some added weight in Endgame.
Yep.
When that comes round again.
It comes around full circle, yep.
We have the ex-con gang who have won the pitch that they were preparing for, but they're also getting tons and tons of calls because Dave and Kurt were on TV having
apprehended the baddies.
Birch and his gang. And then Hank and Janet have gone to Hawaii with the old house that we saw constantly in the first Ant-Man movie, which has been like shrunken into a box.
Yeah.
And they just make it big again on the banks of the sea in Hawaii, which is pretty ideal, to be honest. If you've got a house that you absolutely adore, just being able to shrink it and take it anywhere with you.
Yeah, pretty good.
Way better than a what's the word I'm looking for? Camper van.
Camper van, yes. And then we finally finish with Scott, Hope, and Cassie watching a drive-in movie, which we obviously knew shenanigans are going to be happening here. And then we get the kid getting grown-ups together trope before a giant moth lands on the screen, and we see they're actually watching on a laptop in a miniature cars, which is great.
I love it.
Continuing
it's
the
such
theme.
a nice touch.
Yep.
So cool. And then we're into the credits.
Credits, yes. And weirdly, like I say, this mid-credit scene is, you don't know it at the time, but it's like really super important.
It's super important and also super sad at the same time.
Yeah. With the so it's where they built the small quantum tunnel in the back of the van for Scott to go into, essentially to harvest quantum energy to help Ava out. And they're doing their usual bants and stuff like that. He's doing it. He goes in. He collects it all in the little capsule thingy. He's about to return, and he's like, "All right, come on, guys." And then they're all chatting. It cuts to Scott, and he's like, "Guys," and then it cuts back to them. You just see like the edges of the leaves as they've just been dusted by Thanos, and that's it. And you just hear him talking through the radio, and no one being there.
Yeah.
So it's like genuinely super important scene because there's also a giant plot point in Avengers.
It's a great element of this film and several of the films that build up to Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
That these small scenes that are important to the individual films, but you don't recognize as being
important,
as going to be important to anything else. And obviously, as you say, when we get to Endgame, we'll see that this is absolutely vital to the story of Endgame. It's just right now what we're looking at
a funny little scene.
Scott being stuck in the quantum realm,
and because the fact that because it's gonna be involved. The time travel aspect is going through the quantum realm. B, the truck, how with the little tunnel is going to be kind of key for the final fight scene because it's going to be what they're trying to get to. And C, it's where Scott comes from, so they know that he wasn't dusted, which means, so it's like it's really ridiculous how many important things are from this little scene.
Yeah,
but so we didn't appreciate how it when watching it the first time, it was just almost like, oh, that's how they get dusted, and that was it. This is us bringing us into current timeline. This is us time checking where the film is, because like in the first Ant-Man film, they don't really. Again, they're kind of in isolation for the rest of the MCU, apart from the Falcon bit. And similar in this one, again, they don't really. You get the Civil War name checks. We know it's happened after Civil War, and now this is put us into right. This is where it happens. So again, it's that's kind of what I thought it was. It was just okay. This is just what time checking is. We're up to modern day now, so to speak. And then the final post credit scene just being one of the giant ants playing the drums.
Which is another one of those post-credit scenes that we seem to be getting quite a lot at the minute, which is just not worth waiting for.
Yeah. It's like they try and fake you out. Like sometimes they're really important, and sometimes it's just like, you stayed there for ages for no reason.
Like it just, I'm not a fan of this.
I'm alright with it because I think it's a gamble.
If you're gonna have scenes, you know that everybody is going to wait for an extra 10 minutes all the way through the credits. And I sort of feel like you owe them a decent payoff, but obviously not. So in summary then, it's still just a meh from me. There are some bits of this film I genuinely love.
Yeah.
And there are some bits of this film I genuinely dislike. And most of the film is like nice, and I think that's probably not a great thing that you want to say about a film. Like,
see,
it's
for
just
me,
nice.
This is why I like it. This is why I really enjoyed it the second time round, because, like I say, the first time after seeing it, I do remember kind of enjoying it, but being a bit meh about it. But like watching it the second time, I think I just really enjoyed it so much more, which is part of the fun. Like I just really enjoyed it all. So I'm happy with my thumbs up.
When it was out in the cinema, it definitely suffered for coming
after Infinity War.
Infinity War. And I sort of feel like maybe Marvel did it a bit of a disservice, and that actually if Captain Marvel had followed Infinity War, then perhaps Ant-Man and the Wasp would have done a little bit better, or felt
I don't know. I
little
think
bit
either
better
way,
to start with.
I think everything following Infinity War, apart from Endgame, would have been the same. Because I think even Captain Marvel, and I think that would have done it a disservice. So I think either way round, they would have done it. I don't think because it was just such a cliffhanger and such a high. Yeah, I don't think anything. The only thing that could have and did would be the final Avengers film. So I think either way, both of these films, it was going to be a difficult one. Fair point. But hey, that's our show for this week. If you want to rewatch along with us, next week we'll be talking about Captain Marvel.
You can follow our show at MarvelingPod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, or email us your thoughts, geeks@marvelingpod.com.
And if you've enjoyed the show, why don't you tell just one other person about it? You can do it now while you have your phone handy.
And that's it. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thanks very much, Ollie.